Okay, I know it's early for many. This is Saturday, 6/22/2024. Infinite Plane Saturn Day, I should say. Although, we're going to be doing our usual Saturn Day open phones later. It's just very early, and I wasn't able to get into the office last night. Well, I was, but we were in Discord discussing future plans and the next step. And the next step, of course, is moving the IPS Insighter into the Meetverse. It has to go into production, so I'm working on that, along with the Q doxing documentary. And there's a big update here. I got this message about 6 a.m. and I realized I'd missed this news story. And it's big because it's related to our case here. And it has to do with Marco Polo, as in the front company of ICU LLC, which is a company that is basically a political action group led by Garrett Ziegler, and they're the ones who dissected Hunter Biden's laptop, and they had been accused of hacking in addition to defamation. And his defense in this Hunter Biden versus Garrett Ziegler case has been, I'm not a hacker, I'm just a journalist, and this is just information dissemination. And I had been reaching out to Biden's legal team for months because I have knowledge that one of Garrett Ziegler's unnamed defendants is actually a bona fide hacker, and that would be Goldfinch. And I made these claims based on actual statements from Ziegler that, Ziegler and Goldfinch worked together in the Trump White House. One was in the White House press corps, the other was an aide, and I believe he was involved in uh, trade policy or something, Ziegler. Anyway, these two knew each other. We know Goldfinch because of our interactions with this particular hacker, and I know him as a hacker. So, my point being, Ziegler's defense of being a journalist dissipates when you find out that he actually did contract with a hacker. So, this is a hacking case. And so, Ziegler tried to have the case dismissed on the basis that he's not a hacker, and the judge needed more time to figure out, well, what is the truth here? Well, as it turns out, and this is just from yesterday, the judge has ruled on this, and they have decided that Garrett Ziegler is in fact going to have to face a hacking lawsuit. And this is a big deal because that's criminal. And this is also a big deal because we know one of the co-defendants who has been served at ICU LLC by us on June 3rd on a separate case, but it's for the exact same thing. In other words, Hunter Biden, is suing the same person for the same reasons, defamation and hacking. And it's just interesting here, the timing of it. So here's an update on that story. Judge rules Trump White House policy analyst turned Biden laptop report poster must face Hunter's hacking lawsuit after failed recusal bid. So this is great news for us. The judge there determined that the president's son, who at the motion to dismiss stage of the suit had sufficiently alleged all of the elements that constitute state computer fraud. So you have to check off certain boxes, and yeah, this is essentially hacking. And so what we're talking about here is a laptop left behind at some computer repair shop, and then somebody accessed the hard drive, made multiple copies of it, and distributed it, and all under the auspice of being some kind of journalist just sharing information. And one more thing, his company, ICU LLC, which is publicly known as Marco Polo, should have its tax exempt status revoked, and it probably will. But anyway, we'll follow this story as it develops. I don't want to spend too much time on it other than to say this is really good for us in our suit because, and also I have been going to all these different articles that talk about it, like lawandcrime.com, and I'm going into the comments and I'm letting people know that the hacker's name is Marcus Goldfinch. And marcusgoldfinch.com tells you everything you need to know. And this is going to generate, I believe this will generate a tidal wave of outrage when it's determined that a top QAnon influencer slash criminal computer hacker has uh, been under the radar for years as a White House press corps reporter, and that he has been in the same room as a lot of these people who are trying to figure out who's behind this insurrection, who's this Q. So this is a storm waiting to happen. I think we've been setting the stage for this, but it's going to be a mess. Hopefully, it's going to explode in all the appropriate faces like it should, because this is bombshell. It really is. So I look forward to the doxing of Goldfinch publicly and what should be some kind of, uh, the court of public opinion is going to be less kind than I think anything else, because we're dealing with retribution. You see, a lot of people see this attack on Hunter Biden as unfair, whether or not you like the guy or any of the pictures of him, which I don't, or his lifestyle. The fact of it is, he was attacked unfairly, and I think that his drug abuse and his past has been held against him unfairly. And to the left, to Biden's side, he's a very sympathetic character, and they side with him. And they look at these other guys as bullies who are just trying to destroy this man. And if you don't know the whole story, they put him on billboards. They deliberately tried to destroy him, but humiliated him in many different ways. And I think that the same fervor with which the right wing went after Hunter Biden is going to be exhibited on the left when they go after Marcus Goldfinch. Because Goldfinch is a Trump lackey, a Trump lapdog who has been in Trump Tower, Mar-a-Lago, Bedminster, and who has been in the Trump White House, in Trump's shadow for years. A friend of Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka, a friend of Jack Posobiec, a friend of Alex Jones, and anybody who's anybody in the right-wing media echo chambers. So I'm looking forward to this, but we'll continue this with more information later. I just couldn't go back to sleep after I got the message. And as far as my case against him, well, we still have 6 days for him to respond to the process server, and he's screwed whether he responds or he doesn't. So I'm looking forward to that. And a few more things are going to have to happen as far as motions going back and forth as Google tries to worm their way out of this, but not going to happen. We'll move forward though. More interestingly, we have some updates on the connections between Robert De Niro and Trump as it relates to the taxi driver and the Joker and the Metascript subtext. This is getting very interesting. Also, we have some really unexpected developments. I thought this was an AI. Synchromorpheus posted this. I thought this was AI. One of the main stars of the Sandy Hook drama, one of the, I don't even want to say the names because it's so litigious, but Noah, the child that is alleged to have never existed by Jim Fetzer, had a twin sister. And I didn't know this. So you have this twin element here. And what's interesting here, and this is an interview from People magazine, and Synchromorpheus posted this on Twitter. I think this is the exclusive first interview with People. Now, how is this for a theory? It was actually, this is crazy. Noah Posner never existed, but it was his twin sister all along. So if you look here, and I thought this was AI, one of the primary victims of this event, whose face resurfaced at some other shooting in India later, didn't it? He had a twin sister. So what is suggested here is that, because we've said this before, that one, and Fetzer has posited this theory, that one of the ways they invent these fake victims is you take someone's childhood photos and then Photoshop them into their adult photos. And so, like, here's me holding a younger me, and it's my son. And then my son gets killed by a bowl cut with an AR-15. Easy. Don't have to hide any evidence. Never existed. Well, you could do the same thing with twins. So it's being suggested by Synchromorpheus that this is actually plausible, that he never existed, which isn't far off from what Fetzer had been saying all along. So what Fetzer had reported, and this is another update, State of the Nation has republished his motion to open his Sandy Hook lawsuit. So even though Alex Jones took the fall on behalf of all of us for this event, and he backtracked and he basically capitulated, even though he did that, as we knew he would, because he's controlled opposition, Jim Fetzer has never relented. And he has been trying to open this case back up, and he has also been hit with a lawsuit. If you don't know Jim Fetzer's background with this whole event, he published a book called Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, and Amazon pulled his book. He got sued. His publishing company took a hit. I actually reached out to him, and I suggested, hey, let's republish your book, but let's republish it as fiction and get past the filters. And at that point, he had agreed that, fiction could be something of a way to camouflage the truth. So if you look up this book called The Capstone Event, and this is hilarious, the cover art is a mashup, and you wouldn't know this unless I told you, because it's not advertised in the book, but this is actually a mashup of David Hogg and Lanza. It's called The Capstone Event. The first casualty of war is truth, but what happens when the war is psychological and waged in secret? Based upon the true story of a retired safety officer entangling himself in a mass shooting investigation where nothing is what it seems, and the lines between reality and fiction are blurred. It asks the question, what happens when truth itself is taken captive by a powerful force or powerful forces in high places? So this book is also available as an audiobook, by the way. But it tells the story of Wolfgang Helbig, more or less. It tells the story of the school shooting and how it could plausibly be faked. But anyway, here's some reviews. Brilliant. You must read the entire book. A lot of research about the author in order to get it. 5 stars because I get it. I think it was written in this format so it would not be censored. 4 stars. Real event. 5 stars. Entertaining story that helps you understand how we're being conditioned by government propaganda. Anyway, there's a number of reviews in here of people who obviously are not getting the purpose of it. The purpose of it was, you can't censor us. And judging by the number of ratings he got and the fact that it's been selling since it was published, I think this was a successful project. And this was meant to be just one of many projects that we were going to be involved in, publishing-wise. And I actually plan to reach out to him again separately. I want to talk to Jim Fetzer about his moon landing debunking book. But anyway, he's working on this, and what he has posited here is that we're looking at a Photoshop creation. And what Synchromorpheus has posited that I think makes even more sense is that we're looking at a Photoshop creation based off of a twin sister. And then he adds on to it. You can observe the same trick with JonBenet Ramsey and her brother Burke, Nicole Brown Simpson and her sister Denise, Lane Graves and his sister Ella, and 2 of the Challenger crew members. And as you can see here, it is highly likely or possible, if you just look at the Photoshop that'd be involved, it makes all the sense in the world, just face swapping. JonBenet Ramsey may in fact be a fiction and may actually be the brother. Nicole Simpson may be her sister and maybe Megyn Kelly, I don't know. I'm looking at these examples of these twins, and one of them just conveniently dies, the other one continues. We've seen this before with the twinsies and the Challenger. Anyway, fascinating development. We'll dig into this. And then I got a couple of interesting posts from Zen of Machiavelli in the last couple of days. So this one just points out that Madeleine McCann, who is basically another JonBenet Ramsey reboot, and JonBenet Ramsey, their births were separated by 666 weeks. Now, what does this mean? This is very consistent. We see this type of I guess you would call these indicators of a hoax, but we see these clues that connect these different characters. Like Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg having the same birthday. It's like, are they pulled out of the same vats? Is there some kind of system here? But this is all very intriguing. And by the way, Kyle Rittenhouse is in the news because he has ruined the lives of his family members, his sister, his mom, because a lot of people think that the mom dropped him off. Wendy Rittenhouse dropped him off. Anyway, they've been through hell. I don't know if you know the whole story of Wendy Rittenhouse, but when Kyle was in jail, you had a few people around Kyle, like influencers. You had these QAnon maniacs, and one of them, Lynn Wood, attorney Lynn Wood. I think they even call him Lucifer Wood. Lynn Wood is a shady character himself, and total QAnon grifter. He kind of disappeared, but he was the one calling for the hanging of Mike Pence. But he convinced Kyle Rittenhouse's mother to keep him in jail. She said he said to her, it's going to be an apocalypse. He'll be safer in jail. when this election thing goes down. So she left him in. So he stays in jail for a couple of months. Meanwhile, all the money that's being raised is going to Lynn Wood. So Lynn Wood had grifted some $4.5 million or more off the Rittenhouse story. And then Wendy Rittenhouse is like trying to hunt him down. Here's a couple of quotes here. Lynn Wood attempting, this is it. Unbelievable. So Rittenhouse and Lynn Wood have been feuding, but attorney Lynn Wood accused of leaving Rittenhouse in jail to raise money for the Fight Back campaign. It gets better. Lynn Wood allegedly punched the executive of the foundation raising the money. I haven't kept up with this, but it goes back and forth, but apparently Wendy Rittenhouse was trying to get some of this money back. All these grifters. I mean, this is even better than Steve Bannon selling $4 million of fake bricks to build the wall to MAGAs and then getting pardoned by Trump. Although he's still going to jail on the 1st for something entirely different, for contempt of court. Now he's begging the Supreme Court to keep him out of jail. It's like, no, that's credibility. You know, fake swatting yourself can only get so far. You go to jail, you get real credibility. Okay, I want to get back on track. We covered Ziegler. We touched on this Sandy Hook development with Fetzer and this twin angle, which we'll continue to dig into. But I have a couple of other things. Zen of Machiavelli had pointed out something that I want to get into. Oh, the Joker thing. Let's get into the Joker thing. This is highly significant. So last week, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the significance of Robert De Niro showing up at the Trump trial, because every Trump trial, every major media event around it has involved, in the subtext, in the metascript, in the background, it has all involved the Joker theme, Joker and Batman. For example, 4/4/2023, Trump is out there on trial and Joker 2 is being filmed outside. This is on 4/4, which is the 44th birthday of Heath Ledger, the other Joker. But now we have the Joker named Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix, Joker 2. It adds up. So we're looking at this Joker connection here, the lynch mob outside. I mean, the angry mob. Well, now we go forward to this one. The next one, we have Trump's on trial. He's inside praying or sleeping, depending on who you believe. And outside, you got Maxwell Azarello setting himself on fire, like a phoenix, walking phoenix. He has some Joker connections. He's wearing a shirt in one of his pictures, Eat the Rich, connects to Joker, Kill the Rich. His name, Azarello, corresponds to one of the writers of the Batman Joker series for DC. So we were finding these other interesting similarities between Trump inside and the Joker connection, and it gets deeper considering that was on 4/19, the anniversary of Waco, where 33-year-old Dave Koresh was incinerated. And Waco is where Trump kicks off his campaign. Waco is where Alex Jones, Timothy McVeigh both get motivated. McVeigh blows up Oklahoma City on a 4/19. So you have another McVeigh connection added into the Dave Koresh and Waco and Trump and the Burning Man. And it gets deeper, but we covered this. So now we go to the next one. We got Robert De Niro showing up. Trump deranged, mad at Trump, calls Trump a gangster, says he's a destroyer, going to destroy everything. These are all code words. It wasn't just somebody with Trump derangement syndrome, some unhinged leftist, which is kind of redundant. So this leftist, angry at Trump, shows up. No, it's more than that. Robert De Niro brings with him a number of aspects. One, he is, and this is significant to this specific event in this trial, one, he is Frank Murray in the Joker movie. Joker shoots him in the head on TV. So you have that element, the headshot, and of course the Joker. But then what's more, the Joker movie was inspired by Taxi Driver. It's based on Taxi Driver, rather. Taxi Driver stars Robert De Niro, and Robert De Niro is an assassin who is about to shoot some guy. And if you dig into that movie, there's some other Trump connections to this. But the point of it is, as Travis Bickle, this would-be assassin who, is sort of this anti-hero. In this, he is basically Joker. So he's both Joker and the guy getting shot by the Joker. Now, what's more, the movie Taxi Driver inspired John Hinckley to shoot Reagan and Brady, who was we talked about this recently, but the numbers here, the symbols, it's all really intriguing. But the main point here is that Joker inspired by Taxi Driver inspired an assassin, and then you have the De Niro connection. So let me bring up a picture I had highlighted, and this a couple pictures I juxtaposed. So here on the top of it, you see Robert De Niro as Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, the most iconic scene. He has his finger to his head, and there's a blood splatter on the wall behind him. Gruesome scene. Now, right here below, Joker, where after he gets shot, he has a blood splatter behind his head as Murray Franklin. So the significance here, Robert De Niro in both positions. And then Robert De Niro, in addition to being from the Joker movie and Taxi Driver, he also plays a young Don Corleone, which has some Trump connections. When you get into the significance of the Godfather, the Don, a bad Don, or a Badin, we're talking about the bigger picture here and all the different ways they represent Donald Trump on the world stage. Then he plays the role of a sheriff in Machete, a racist, xenophobic, Trump-like sheriff who gets shot by a sniper and is taken to Park Lane Hospital. Well, Kennedy gets shot by a sniper and is taken to Parkland Hospital. The connection here, of course, is that we have been talking about the Donald Trump headshot predictive programming and how it's been inculcated into nearly everything that we've been looking at. So De Niro showing up brings in a number of elements. He as Trump, he both as the sheriff, as Don, and then of course as Frank Murray, and then getting shot by the Joker, and then you connect it to the actual presidential assassin, John Hinckley, who happens to have JFK's birthday, 5/29. But these are all the elements which, if you threw them into a mind map, it's pretty succinct. And so his presence on the world stage then is fully explained. But then it gets deeper, and this is where I want to get into the tweet by Zen of Machiavelli. He says, and this was posted 3 hours ago, "It was, in my opinion, another Taxi Driver inspired incident like when Reagan was shot to impress Jodie Foster." So if you remember, when John Hinckley shot Reagan, he was also, I guess, one of these crazy shooters, but it was talked about that he was obsessed with Jodie Foster. And Jodie Foster was saved by Robert De Niro's character in Taxi Driver. So this is all really interesting. Then here, something that just happened. We just had a shooting in a place called Mad Butcher. And we didn't go live yesterday, so I didn't talk about this, but Mad Butcher, mass grocery shooting in Arkansas. 3 dead, 11 wounded. It was like 11:30. Suspect ID'd. So we have this 311. 3 dead, 11 injured. Arkansas at the Mad Butcher. Now, here are the elements that Zen of Machiavelli has pointed out here. So one, the name, Travis Posey, shooter in Mad Butcher. Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. And then recently, Donald Trump has been mentioning Hannibal Lecter and how much he likes Hannibal Lecter, and nobody knows why. It seems random. Maybe it's not random. Why did Donald J. Trump say Hannibal Lecter, Mad Butcher? Because Jodie Foster. He redirected. This is Zen of Machiavelli's tweet. He's just bringing up these elements here. There's some fascinating connections. In Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle famously sends flowers to Sybil Shepherd, which she refuses. This is his dark turn. Then he volunteers on the presidential election campaign. Now there's more in here. It's kind of esoteric, but I want to just point out the pictures here. Taxi Driver. Here is Jodie Foster and Hannibal Lecter. Then we have this connection here. Travis Posey, the shooter in Mad Butcher, looks a lot like John Hinckley. Fascinating, overlapping. And there may be more. There's something else here. Deer Hunter is another classic De Niro movie, he points out. So I'm just noticing here that there's more to the story. And if you look at Deer Hunter, and this is the cover of it. Robert De Niro has a gun to his head. So what I'm saying is the way they play this out on the world stage. You have the actors on the stage. The shooter is the Joker is the wild card, the chaos agent. So when you look at Batman and Joker, Joker is mentally ill. He's a victim of society. He's part of the class warfare. He wants to get back. And in the Joker movie, that's what he's basically about. His family's been abandoned. His mom. He's his brother, or rather, it's kind of insinuated there's some connection with him and Batman, common father perhaps. But Batman's privileged. So you have rich versus poor, kill the rich, eat the rich, like Maxwell's Rello had. Maxwell's Rello was all about fighting fascism, corporate fascist takeovers, Trump and Hillary on the same team. So you have this theme here of the Joker being the chaos agent, the one who has an axe to grind with authority. So the Joker shoots Frank Murray, like this father figure. And so you have, of course, Joker being inspired by Taxi Driver, who is similarly this crazy guy who is, well, insane, driven insane by possibly loneliness, disenfranchisement, disaffected, obsessed with guns. So there's a lot to unpack here, but we need to look deeper at Taxi Driver, Joker, De Niro, and the significance of De Niro in a number of these roles, and this headshot theme, which is again all connected to Trump. So let's go and see who's in the chats. I know it's kind of early this morning. I see about 65 people here on YouTube. We are joined by Diana South, Rocco Calzone. It says 22 is my favorite number. It looks like two ducks in the water. It does, doesn't it? Yeah, we're early today, but we're going to be live for phones later. Joined by Leilai We See, says auto hoaxing is for non-curverts only. Yeah, if you haven't auto hoaxed the curve or the news bent reality, it's not going to make sense to you. Mazel says, I've been up for hours, is about to go back to sleep. Evolvement, Ted Stryker, Ollie Goering. Yeah, hey, FMGR, Twitch was glitching again. Not surprised. Messianic Charlatan says, twin sister named Greta Thunberg, who has the same birth dates as Noah's Kyle character. That's right, some people have suggested that Noah Posner is Kyle Rittenhouse, which would be interesting. Someone ought to look at these birth dates. Yeah, let's go. We're going to be live later. This was impromptu. I had way too much material built up here, and then I couldn't sleep after I found out that Garrett Ziegler is going to have to face some hacking accusations. And you know who did the hacking? Marcus Goldfinch. When that gets out, it's going to be fireworks. We're going to be at the center of that because we have so much ammunition piled up. We were talking about this last night. We have ammunition for days. Every one of these, every single shot has another thread. This is going to be devastating for Ziegler. And if it goes right, and I think this is where it should go, that guy he should be facing criminal charges. But it's all going to help our suit, as you'll see. Tominoid says, the king of comedy, the other Scorsese, De Niro, Joker influence. We'll look into that. All right, Penguin Doctor says, oh, okay, I'll check it out. Penguin Doctor says, La Cavatina is a great classical guitar piece from The Deer Hunter. Now, I haven't seen these movies. Raging Bull is another one. So there's some interesting stuff from De Niro that, again, all pertains to this. But we have more. There's certainly more, and I'm mind mapping it out. This material from Zen of Machiavelli, connecting it to the Mad Butcher shooting, is new to me, but Mad Butcher, just the name of it, sounds like perfect location for a psyop. Here's an excerpt from The Deer Hunter, Cavatina. Anyway, okay, moving on. We have a lot more to pour over here. Here's another post from Gary Burton Jr. Breaking, Travis Posey has been booked for the Arkansas grocery store shooting. It says AR, but means Arkansas. Was it with an AR-15? Okay, listen to this. Left 3 people dead, 11 civilians, 2 law enforcement officers shot. And according to this, according to the report here, Posey was grazed in the head. Okay, so he has a head wound. Age 44. Which, okay, now 44, why does that stand out? Well, we had the Joker turning 44 on 4/4. And that was last year. The number 4/4, well, the 4 is a cross. You know, 4 seasons, and the symbol itself is kind of intrinsic to the number. But like T2 or two T's or two X's, uh, two fours, these can all represent a double cross, which all has second coming symbolism, which is why Joker 2 is significant, J2 or Terminator 2. And the double cross is a very key symbol in this bigger meta-scripted narrative as it all pertains to the second coming, the first rung being death, the second resurrection. So that's significant there, the 44. And this number has also been associated with the son of Sam, Mr. 44. In gematria, if you're into it, many associate this with the killing number. But my point being, 44-year-old named Travis has the connection that we've brought up, kind of reiterates a lot of what we've already said. Now, this is interesting. The gas station says Karma. I don't know if that means anything. We'll continue to dig into this story, but the name Travis is interestingly a connection, definitely a connection to Travis Bickle. Travis Eugene Posey. I'm sure we'll have more information about this tonight. One of the reasons I want to do these early morning live streams, the Ips Morning Deprograms, is so we can set the stage for later. All right, let's continue. Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse slammed by his sister for his unwillingness to help them. So they're getting into the crisis acting business, I guess. They're claiming that they're having hardships, so they have a GoFundMe. She wrote, this is Kyle's sister. Just under 4 years ago, our lives were shattered when my brother was involved in a tragic shooting incident. What was tragic? I thought that was a win. Aren't we all on the same sheet here? There was nothing tragic about Kenosha. He shot a strangler, a burglar. He nearly disarmed the burglar. Well, he disarmed him in one sense, but he shot the guy's bicep, and then he took down a pedo. Like, I'm saying that's like a win-win-win. I don't see the tragedy. What is the tragedy? Is anybody actually mourning Jojo, the pedo? Like, if that bothers you, that he got shot 3 times in the pelvis and then somewhere else, if that bothers you, you can take comfort in the fact that he died doing something he loved, chasing a minor. As far as the other ones, no sympathy. No sympathy for Gage Grossenkrautz, now Paul Prediger. It's like you don't go undercover, change your name, and then get on the news again just because somebody hits you with an SUV, which is what he's doing. And now he's doing a college campus tour. So anyway, I don't see the tragedy in Kenosha. Anyway, as she goes on, the aftermath of this event uprooted our family stability and left us grappling with grief, trauma, and the harsh reality of starting over. So the story is this. They're being evicted in 8 days, and Kyle, who's a big, rich, right-wing influencer, aiming to become the next, I don't know, Steven Crowder or something, isn't willing to donate anything. And she only needs $3,000. She only needs $3,000 he won't pay. And isn't he suing, like, Whoopi Goldberg and CNN? I mean, I'm pretty sure he's raking it in, even though he got grifted by Lynn Wood. Now, here's some interesting bits of metascript pointed out by, I believe, Synchromorpheus in our server here. This is when I say metascript, I'm talking about the totality of the messaging from all platforms, all angles in this immersive echo chamber. So here's a couple of examples. This pertains to the debate. Raging Bull. So here's an article about the debate from Yahoo. Biden seeks turning point in debate. So one, we have the phrase turning point. Biden seeks turning point. Well, Turning Point USA is the name of the Conservative Political Action Committee, but Turning Point is obviously a reference to the Turner Diaries. The Turner Diaries is what inspired Timothy McVeigh to do the Oklahoma City bombing. The Turner Diaries was written by a guy born on 9/11, interestingly. But it is something of a Bible to the white nationalist movement, and the idea is The turning point is when the government tries to take your guns, like they did at Waco. That's the turning point. And what does that mean? It means that white nationalists need to work with Russia or somebody and get nukes and nuke everyone else. So it's basically the story we've been forecasting. Domestic violent extremists doing a 9/11 by getting their hands on nukes right out of the Turner Diaries. And by the way, the Turner Diaries, again, written by a guy born on a 9/11, has a scene with planes crashing into the Capitol, planes loaded with bombs. I mean, it's basically what we have seen ever since. And by the way, Timothy McVeigh was executed on 6/11/2001 at the age of 33, same age as Dave Koresh. And he was inspired by the death of Dave Koresh. He was there, passing out pamphlets and flyers at the Branch Davidian compound. Alex Jones was there too. The raid on the Waco compound by the ATF was over 1.6 million rounds that they had illegally or something. 1.6. Like, that's interesting. Alex Jones gets really enervated by this whole thing. He gets radicalized by this, and he goes on his multi-year campaign. I mean, his whole radio show has always been about the gun grab. They're going to take our guns. And so, like, that is kind of, I don't know. It just seems like, to me, there's a common theme here with Waco as this ground zero. So you got the radicalization of Alex Jones, the radicalization of McVeigh. McVeigh blows something up, and then what does Alex Jones do? Well, he does January 6th. He leads up to that. And leading up to January 6th, he goes on the Piers Morgan show and he says, if you try to take our guns, it's going to be 1776 again. Well, why was he on Piers Morgan? Why was he so enraged? He was enraged because the DHS said they purchased 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. So the assumption was the 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition was going to be used for Patriots. But again, 1.6, 1.6, January 6, common themes here. So McVeigh, again, executed 6/11, 2001, 33 years old, 90 days before Muhammad Atta, 33, lead hijacker, leads the attack on 9/11. So there's this common theme here. 9/11, 6/11, 33-year-old leads, and what are they doing? Attacking America, but one is foreign, one is domestic. This is why we associate 6/11 with the domestic violent extremist presence and the incoming 9/11 event, which is likely going to involve some kind of a nuke. And that's why we keep seeing 6/11, 11/6 all over this stuff pertaining to a future incoming right-wing attack. That's why the Batman movie ends on 11/6, Gotham Underwater, because the right-wingers radicalized online by Q, aka the Riddler, blow up a dam and flood the polls. They flood the election. And in 2022, the midterm election slogan for the GOP was flood the polls. Reoccurring themes. The Oppenheimer movie itself, the physical IMAX footage, was 11 miles long, weighed 600 pounds, 6/11. Oppenheimer wearing the badge, K6, 11/6. This is super consistent. You had the movie Sound of Freedom last year with Tim Ballard, and it had one of these props, Tim 6/11. Not for Timothy McVeigh, but it was some Bible verse. But I'm just pointing out just a few out of many of these repeated themes. So when I'm talking about metascript, I'm talking about the big picture. So here's an example of some metascripting from this article. Biden seeks turning point in debate. So these are all loaded terms. So here's what Synchromorpheus has identified. And this is from the article. This entire election, as far as I'm concerned, if Biden goes out there and messes up, it's game over. But if he goes in there and he can handle himself against Trump, a runaway train, a locomotive, a raging bull, then this guy deserves another shot to be president. So raging bull deserves another shot to be president. Okay, bull shot president. And then raging bull is a De Niro reference. Banging heads is another phrase that you see here, which is highlighted. Senator Elizabeth Warren told The Hill, I'm glad to see it. We know who the candidates are going to be. Why not let them bang heads? Interesting phrase. So if you go into the nuance on the phrases, it tends to reveal quite a lot. We mentioned this yesterday. Actor, or a couple days ago, Donald Sutherland, father of Kiefer Sutherland, dies at 88, and he played the president in Hunger Games. So another connection here. President Donald, 88, very significant. I thought it was Keith Sutherland, but since I'm not part of the Mandela Effect Club, I don't get to claim this as a Mandela Effect. But I guarantee that if Ryan Stavely misremembers, or misheard Kiefer as Keith, he would declare it a Mandela. Now, we didn't get into this yesterday, but yesterday, the 21st, is referenced in the movie The 13th Floor. The protagonist awakens to the real world from the simulation June 21st, 2024, says the newspaper. But it's a Monday. But in reality, Friday, June 21st, 2024 is the date. It's a Friday, not a Monday. So it says here the error was part of the production or a clue that June 21st, 2024, that the real world itself is a simulation. So I don't know if you've seen The 13th Floor. It's one of these movies that came out alongside Matrix and Dark City, and essentially this was suggesting that we're in some kind of a virtual reality. But yesterday's date, June 21st, 2024, was in the movie, and it was some kind of a clue as to the ultimate meaning of it all. So yesterday would have been Simulation Ascension Day. If we are in a sim, or were, it would have ended, I believe, yesterday. Did anybody have that experience? All right, catching up on your comments. Okay, let's see here. Scotty Smith, what about the new movie about the moon landing? Fly Me to the Moon. Scarlett Johansson, a marketing executive hired to sell people on a fake moon landing. Yeah, that's a big one. But the thing is, it's not. Some people say this is going to wake people up. No, it's not. It's going to put them into a deeper trance. The narrative is this: NASA had to fake the moon landing because they couldn't put it together in time in order to beat the Russians in the space race. It assumes the existence of space. It assumes the viability of space travel and the landability of the moon itself. It does not take away the concept of, which we talk about here, of space as a construct to unite everybody under a new heaven that merges scientism with all the archaic religions. No, they still believe in outer space and moon landings. They just thought that this particular event had to be faked. But the subsequent moon landings were real, like when they're golfing on the moon. Like, come on. But people fall for this. This is what I call a guardrail. Yeah, the moon landing was fake, but space is real, and as long as they stick with the fake moon landing, they never unpack the whole picture. They never go all the way out. They never go beyond. I mean, there are people who professionally debunk the moon landing who still believe in space stations. It's like if you look at the moon landing and deconstruct it using your reason and logic, and then you look at the space station and you think it's real, then you just abandoned the reason and logic you used to deconstruct that one. It literally does not make sense. I mean, the space program is a house of cards, and the bottom levels are fake. They're eminently debunkable. You pull those cards out, what happens? The rest of it falls. You don't get to debunk Apollo 11 and keep the rest of the structure. That's some serious cognitive dissonance. So this movie is damage control, so that those who are able to finally grasp that NASA lied will say, oh, of course we lied. We had to lie to trick the Russians. You know how they say, we landed on the moon? Like people say, we won the football game. No, you were on your couch eating potato chips. You didn't land on the moon. You might have heard it on the radio. You got it secondhand, third hand. You did not land on the moon. But people will say, yeah, we landed on the moon to beat the Russians. Well, the story in a few years is going to be, yeah, we faked the moon landing the first time to trick the Russians. They'll take pride in it. Like, oh yeah, we psyoped them those Ruskies. We had to do it. It's insane. But nobody's going to say space is fake. But I'm looking forward to it. It's very significant that Scarlett Johansson was in the movie Asteroid City, which is about basically Stanley Kubrick and the faking of the 20th century, if you really get into it, because it has Scarlett Johansson as this movie starlet out in the desert, a witness to a UFO descending. But when you get into the subtext of it, it ultimately is about, I think, the staged nature of pretty much everything since the advent of cinema and the merging of it with our worldview. I mean, TV, the television, not just TV, but media itself, but the TV, your iPhone, this ubiquitous screen. This is the great unifier. This is the one world Bible, Big Brother approved once they get rid of all the unapproved content, once they get everyone properly conditioned to use this screen as their primary frame of reference. It is like the most um, advanced holy book ever conceived. Okay, moving on. Tomanoid says, this popped up on my YouTube, The Secrets of Special Effects with Brian Johnson of Star Wars, Thunderbirds, Space, 1999, and more. And he talks about working on 2001. We have a lot to add on this 2001 Space Odyssey conversation. It's been getting pretty in depth because you can look at these. This is another guardrail. Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing. And then you have his daughter, Vivian, always going on InfoWars to say, no, he didn't. It would have looked more realistic if he did it. But no, nobody. I mean, look, if you believe Kubrick faked the moon landing, then you fell for a guardrail. Like NASA had to hire Kubrick to trick the Russians. No, Kubrick's movies contain predictive programming for psyops decades in the future. I mean, think about it. You're watching The Shining and you're getting hints and foreshadowing for 9/11. I mean, forget the Apollo 11 stuff. You got 9/11 being forecasted. And then 9/11 happens, and then after that, and if you wouldn't have known this until later, but then you can discern foreshadowing for 2020 in his movies, like in 2001 Space Odyssey. The guy Floyd talking about the fake epidemic and lying to the public. It's just incredible. But it's not that incredible, actually. It's mundane. It's easy to explain. It's propaganda, it's advertising, it's marketing. It is not synchro mysticism. It is not magic. It is not the result of synchronicity and the universe. Nope. It's much more nefarious when you get into it because what it reveals is that our news is written in advance. And that sounds like a tall claim to a lot of people who are conditioned to believe everything they see on TV. But you have to understand how good liars operate. A good liar, the ones you don't know, because you probably have some in your life and you don't know because they're good. They don't lie to you with every breath. Otherwise, you would banish them. You would recognize them. If you catch them, you don't listen to them. Good liars tell the truth as much as they need to, so you trust them and have your guard down. And they lie strategically from your blind spots. And the mass media is a liar in the same way. So it presents this version of the world, and it mostly aligns most of the time. But then, at any moment, they can insert something fake, and it gets by unquestioningly. It gets past everyone's filters. And that's the way that mass media has always worked. So what they do is, yeah, they're reporting the day-to-day news, which is really just weather, because nothing ever happens. If you think about it, does anything ever really happen? No, weather, basically. A little bit of crime, but they don't report on any significant crime. They only report on dramatized crimes that they invent that they can then leverage to attack their political opponents and make changes. So they have their activist-driven agenda, left and right, which they will really focus on. Mostly our worldview is a construct based on what they omit more than what they reveal. But my point being, it's not a stretch to say they can write our news in advance. You have to admit, even if you're skeptical of this claim, that every time they do a psyop, it is therefore a pre-written event, pre-scripted in advance, already written, actors, cinematographers, and production crew, and they have it on a calendar date. Hey, in the future, we're going to perform this piece of propaganda, and it's going to be inserted into the historical narrative. It'll go down in history as real. So what do you have? Pre-written fake events that end up in the history books because they made it to the mainstream. Meanwhile, the truth, coming from places like this, will not go into the history books. So you can therefore argue that yes, they do write our history in advance, exclude the opposition. And if they write it in broad strokes and create these big events, everything else bounces off of it. So you might not even be part of the programming department. You just have to be in media and bounce around the same echo chambers, and you're just going to reinforce it. You operate within the same fictional universe, the same parameters. All right, continuing on your comments here. Tricky Woo says rockets don't move in a vacuum. There's literally nothing to push it. Penguin Doctor says hail King Grifter L. Wood. Yeah, Lynn Wood represented the bomber at the Centennial Park terror attack. He has an interesting background, but he went full blown QAnon. It was he really rode that wave, and then he just kind of disappeared. They Lie We See says truthers be like the moon landing is fake, but there's a secret space program. Yeah, they make up stuff all the time. They lie to themselves to maintain the lies that they believe in. Alex Jones claimed at one point that, oh, the moon landings were fake, but they were real. Like, oh, okay, how does that work? Well, no, they were faked because they didn't have the technology, but they're real because they have a secret space program that did take them there. But they don't want us to see the secret space program, which probably has like flying saucers. So they had Stanley Kubrick make the movie version to show us. And they did film stuff up there, but the film didn't survive the Van Allen radiation belt. So we have a super secret, super advanced space program that can fly us to the moon by some other means than rocket propulsion, but we can't figure out how to make film or even a canister to protect the film going through the Van Allen radiation belt. They make up the quirkiest things. But the secret space program is something that you accept on faith. Like, yeah, they lied to me, but they're lying because they're covering up something much bigger. I mean, isn't that what this is like typical? People who are um, in relationships with liars will often basically make excuses for it. You know, make excuses for the lies. Assume they have good intentions. Assume there's a more significant thing behind it. I mean, this is just self-gaslighting is pathetic. Stranger Day says, I just got here. Can you start over? Well, we are going to be live open phones later. So if you want to call in later, we will be open. And you can always subscribe at ips.monster. Archives will be going to your inbox. I'm sending out yesterday's archive here shortly. But this was impromptu. But this is eventually going to be normal. You know, I'm trying to adjust my schedule so I can be here early in the morning to set the stage for what we'll be talking about later. Violet Penguin says, Israel war on Gaza live, at least 42 killed in Shati. Oh, 42? Yeah, the quote war. We just say war in quotes from now on. What really has served us well has been the ability of people to spread their own propaganda. It's a mess because the media does it anyway. They make up their own stuff, they fling it both ways, but the public is now in the info war. So you watch the quote wars, and it's like one side accuses the other side of producing fake content. And if you look, it's like, well, that's video game content. That's from a movie. That's from 10 years ago. So you can't even trust anything they show us. And now it's just numbers and body counts, and you can't even trust, nobody trusts anything. You have the people who want to believe it, and this is morbid. So the people who hate Israel want to believe that people in Gaza are being killed. The people in Israel, I mean, this is just, it's on both sides. They each want to believe that the other is committing real atrocities, but they'll accuse the other of, they'll mutually accuse each other of fakery. Like they disbelieve in each other's martyrs. Like, oh, you got rubber dead kids. Those are fake. Those are simulation training dolls. Well, you got crisis actors. Meanwhile, both sides have the worst special effects. Like, if you're objective, neither side is convincing. I'm still in the camp of nobody died, nobody cried, and if you're going to assert somebody died, if you're going to walk around with theatrical blood on your hands, weeping for fake dead people, then we're going to ask you for better evidence than just your feelings or your outrage that we're calling it fake. And some people get mad when I say fake dead people's lives don't matter. I've triggered people with this. They say, can you not say fake dead kids' lives don't matter? I'm like, sure, but first, tell me which fake dead kids' lives matter. And which of these fake dead kids' lives matter more than the real children who are being put through hyper realistic simulations of mass shooters in order to drill into their heads that they should be terrified of anybody with a bowl cut, that they should be scared of anybody with a MAGA hat and a AR-15? Which I understand it sounds intimidating, but these are just constructs. These don't really even exist. Like, just let's pre-auto hoax this. Should there be any MAGAs popping off in the next few months leading to the election, it's probably a Fed. Like, I'm not even going to accept it as real, even if they have a manifesto. Okay, let me go through some more comments. This is interesting. I didn't see this, but someone had pointed this out to me, so I found the clip. You remember there's a story that apparently Joan Rivers was killed in retaliation for what she said about Obama or the Obamas. Well, there's this theory that she didn't die, but she was a death faker. And I kind of go along with that because you can find videos of someone who looks like her later. Well, apparently Joan Rivers is alive or was alive because she voted for Donald Trump, even though, according to the story, she died in 2014. But here's Donald Trump saying that Joan Rivers actually voted for him.
Joan said she was a Republican. Did you know that?
I thought she might have been a Republican.
Yeah.
I know one thing, she voted for me, according to what she said.
There she goes. Yeah, she voted for him.
Okay, well, there's just one minor problem with that. Joan Rivers died 2 years before the 2016 election, a little too early for early voting.
Yeah, but when has that stopped dead people from voting? Aren't dead people regularly showing up, in the ballots? Okay, I got a comment from Aritos. I was in the same company in AIT, Fort Lee, Virginia. I was water purification. You were graves registration. I was there in 84, 85. What about you? Okay, 84, 85. I wasn't in the military at that time, but I was in Fort Lee, Virginia for graves registration. But when I was in, um, they changed it to mortuary affairs, which sounds better. But yeah, Fort Lee, Virginia was where I had my training in mortuary affairs in the military sense, which isn't like funeral home work. They're not doing the embalming necessarily, although they do if they're overseas shipping people across to the continental United States because they have to be embalmed to ship. But when I was there, it was mostly training for documenting death scenes. So it's kind of more like crime scene analysis, which is why I was able to go from military and apply that experience into getting a job at the Office of the Medical Investigator as a decedent transporter. Because I had thought about becoming a field investigator and I thought about getting deeper into that field. But after a couple of years of moving bodies around and embalming, I kind of decided I didn't want to end up like a lot of the people I was working with. I like them, but I think there was I don't know, years and years of driving around at night, just dealing with people who are constantly in states of shock and bereavement. I don't think it's healthy. Okay, let's continue here. Joined by Cupstar, Tricky Woo. Ollie Goering says inflatable armored tanks. Yeah, I wasn't in any unit where I saw these things, but that was eye-opening for me. And it's not just okay. This is another guardrail. I'm sure you've all heard about the decoy tanks of World War II, and this isn't like an isolated incident. D-Day, parachuting dummies and inflatable tanks, fake radio traffic, inflatable tanks, dummy landing craft, preparing for the large-scale invasion. You can find many images of inflatable tanks, inflatable planes, things made out of wood. They use these in Ukraine. They used wooden rocket launchers, dummy missiles. What's with all the fakery? And so the general explanation will be, oh, we had to trick the Nazis. We had to fake the tanks to trick the Nazis. We had to inflate the tanks to trick the Nazis. Like we had to fake the moon landing to trick the Russians. No, we didn't inflate the tanks to trick the Nazis. We did it to trick the civilians, the public. And when I say we, it's not us. The media is doing propaganda for the government. And so when we see all this, all the war footage, the photography, it's basically like William Randolph Hearst said, give me the pictures, I'll provide you the war. It's not like Russia, or let's just go this inflatable tank things. It's not like the Germans were tricked by a bunch of inflatables. No, the cameras are tricked. And the cameras are tricked to trick the populations on both sides. The the whole thing is that this is stagecraft. This is how you fake large scale operations in a war. You fake a mass shooting behind closed doors, but how do you fake a big battlefield? Well, you use props, special effects. Today you use CGI and video game footage. It's all about creating the illusion. But the idea that these illusions are used to fool the other side, no. It's to fool the public. There's only one side. It's the government mind control apparatus, and then there's us. And the inflatable tanks are to trick us, not to trick the other side. They didn't fake the moon landing to trick the Russians. They faked the moon landing because they faked space to trick everybody, and the Russians are in on it. The Germans, for all intents and purposes, were in on the inflatable tanks. Just like Russia was not fooled by these wooden surface to air rocket launcher things. These vehicles all over the place in Ukraine that are made out of wood aren't tricking the Russians. You can't say, oh, like they don't know, because it's in the newspaper. You're telling me it's front page news that Ukraine is using wooden rocket launchers and it's tricking the Russians, and the Russians, they don't read the newspapers? No, of course they know. Ukraine using fake rocket launchers, here's another one from The Guardian, using decoys to lure Russia. Oh, that's so sneaky. Ukraine using wooden decoys to lure Russia into wasting its missiles. You think they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these missiles and just launch them at decoys? And they're not going to read the papers and find out that these things are all decoys? No, this is not a secret. It's not a secret operation. This is, I think, just props like everything else. All right, let's move on. Cubstar says, I wear the inflatable armor of God. It's like a fat suit. All right, let's get back through our main headlines. We got Mad Butcher, 311 at Mad Butcher, may connect to Hannibal Lecter via Trump, according to Zen Machiavelli. Interesting threads. We'll continue to explore these. The Sandy Hook story continues to evolve as Jim Fetzer is unrelenting, so we'll continue that. We have more and deeper connections between Robert De Niro, his various roles, the Joker, the assassination attempted inspired, and the death of Murray Franklin on the Joker movie. Oh, I'm sorry, the Taxi Driver is what inspired the assassination, but it became Joker. So the connection between Taxi Driver and Joker. My first clue was Robert De Niro. But then when you break down Travis Bickle is the Joker. So that's why it's significant. Travis Bickle is the assassin with the hand to his head there, as you see. But he is a Joker-esque character. So for the Joker to shoot Frank Murray at the end of the movie is highly significant. Okay, let's see what else. Martin Scorsese's violent 76 classic about a cab driving insomniac on a killing spree was a key influence in Todd Phillips' Joker. Mostly, let's see, Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, Joaquin Phoenix in Joker. Rewatching Taxi Driver in the age of Joker. There's a few articles about it. Joker and Taxi Driver are the same movie. It's a ripoff. Taxi Driver, the masterpiece behind Joker. Everything Joker steals from Taxi Driver. Now again, the significance. Taxi Driver inspired the shooting of Reagan by Hinckley, and Hinckley has JFK's birthday. Hinckley was obsessed with the movie about De Niro plotting to assassinate a presidential candidate. So now you got Robert De Niro outside of the courthouse, totally deranged. And he called Trump a destroyer, which again, destroyer is a bad or a bad Don, like bad mafia Don. Robert De Niro played a young Don Corleone. Then he plays the sheriff who is very reminiscent of Trump, who gets shot and goes to Park Lane Hospital. Reference to JFK going to Parkland Hospital. All of this, again, is highly significant from a meta script perspective. In the years leading up to John Hinckley's attempted assassination of Reagan, he was obsessed with Taxi Driver. He watched it at least 15 times, and he read and reread the book, bought the soundtrack, and listened to it for hours on end. I'll have to check out the book, but there's certainly more to it. And then when you get into the shooting itself, this was an interesting little tie-in. So you have the Brady bill was passed as a result because of the James Brady was shot, passed some anti-gun legislation or something. But listen to this. Brady's death in 2014 was finally ruled a homicide, caused by the gunshot wound he received 33 years earlier on 3/30/1981. 3/30? 33? Nothing to see here. Yesterday we were addressing a number of things having to do with the James Cameron connection to the LA riots. And I'm going to do some more, I guess, research on the subject, but basically I've put a lot together to suggest that James Cameron directed the LA riots. And we'll get into that and more likely later on today. But we talked about that last night, and it's in the archives. I'll be uploading here shortly. Here's another interesting tweet by Simple Question Can You Answer? Murray and Joker. Okay, there's two basketball players from the Nuggets named Murray and Jokic, like Joker. I don't know the significance necessarily, but Franklin Murray in the Joker movie, his name Frank is covered in blood. And this kind of stood out to me because if we're looking at the total body of predictive programming for the shooting of Trump in this incoming psyop that's being posited by many of us, well, the Donnie Darko movie is also a reference to Trump. Donnie Darkened is Donald Trump. And in Donnie Darko, he's followed around by this rabbit named Frank. And Frank, which brings in this Alice in Wonderland element, but Frank at the end of the movie gets shot in the eye, gets a headshot. So you got the Frank headshot connected with this Donnie Darko character. And then you have Frank Murray getting the headshot in this movie, and again, you have these overlapping connections with Trump. Here is the image of Frank with a hole in his face. Stranger Day says, if Cameron directed the riots, he did so with the help of others. He conspired to incite a riot, which is illegal, thus a conspiracy. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the riots were staged. January 6th riots were staged. And that when you stage events, every staged event, whether it's a fake shooting, whether it's Kenosha was probably directed. We've got to figure out who directed Kenosha. But when you're looking at a mass shooting event, you're looking at something that has a director. Somebody wrote it. Somebody directed the moon landing. Somebody directed 9/11. Who directed the LA riots? Well, let's look at what started it. What started it? The Rodney King beating, where he was hit 33 times with a baton over 1 minute and 19 seconds. But who filmed it? Well, the guy who filmed it, his name was Holiday, was out on the streets with his camera filming James Cameron filming the Terminator. They're filming at a Terminator location where the Rodney King beating then happened. So this Holiday guy is there filming the Terminator movie. Then he's taking a walk somewhere later on the evening and he catches the beating and then he records it. So you have this direct connection between Cameron being there and then the footage from the backstage of Terminator 2 leading into the Rodney King thing. And to me, that's a huge clue. I find many other clues connecting various other directors to various psyops. So again, to point it out, these events are all fake. They're all fake. 9/11 was fake. So when people say, well, these people are involved, it's treason. No, it doesn't work that way. Like there was no murder. Nobody died. Nobody cried. There wasn't a crime. It's propaganda. Commenter comments here. James Cameron is responsible for the two main anti-woke arguments against girl power, Sigourney Weaver in Aliens and Linda Hamilton in Terminator. Sounds like cameraman. Yeah, it sounds like cameraman or camera on, which really stands out. Demetra 101 says J6 kicked off at 2:12. 2:12 is water's boiling point. Maritime humor. Marathon. Brother is in a boat. Watertown. Very good. That is really good. 2:02 boiling point. Like 9/11 kicking off at 8:46 as Mercury was rising. 2:12. Oh, yep, that is 100% a clue. Good catch there. First, I've seen that. And see, that's an example of, we talk about gematria and numbers and their meaning, but a lot of times it's just code, and a lot of times it's visual puns. It's the type of stuff that you have to look at from multiple angles to see it, but it's a clue for those in the know. And if you know it's fake, it all unravels. Like still to this day, one of my favorite scenes in that whole movie was when Roseanne Boylan gets trampled by her fellow Magas, and she's carrying a sign that says, "Don't tread on me. Don't tread on me." And then she's getting treaded on to death. That's clever. All right, continuing through my notes. Barron Trump is allegedly not connected now, or he was alleged to have been connected to some kind of crypto coin called DJT, but that's being denied. We'll find out. Astronauts are still stuck in space on the Boeing Starliner mission. As we predicted, that mission would be a disaster. And they're going to be landing on Earth soon. They're going to be coming back down. And they're going to be landing in New Mexico. And I had mentioned this thing. So they have never done anything but splashdowns. It's always been in the water when they come back from space. Well, now for the first time, they're going to land on Earth. And I mentioned this has got some kind of man who fell to Earth theme connected to it. The man who fell to Earth, David Bowie, but the significance of going from the celestial to the material and going to the land, it's got some significance to it in that regard. And it turns out that they're landing here in New Mexico. Well, the movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, is about the alien landing in New Mexico. So that's kind of an interesting connection. And it's going to be on the 26th. It'll be in White Sands, New Mexico. Will I drive out to witness it? I might consider that. I would consider, well, I would have to go south. I could do it. I'm waiting for a new mirror. My rear view mirror fell off my truck. The wind was so intense, the thing was loose. I didn't know. And the whole fixture was rattling all night. So I go out for a drive and the mirror falls off, which I took as a sign. It happened on the solstice. And I think maybe it means something. And I was kind of talking, we were in Discord for a long time yesterday. A group of us were just discussing the future of the IPS. And I was trying to determine, what does this mean? The mirror falling off. So I have to get that fixed before I go. And maybe it's this. Maybe it's the end of something significant. Like what led up to right now has been, 6 years of the evolution of this channel, of our thought process, the methodology, but also our battle with Mind Control Central. And so here we are, a week away from Goldfinch having to respond. Goldfinch being sued by us, but also by Garrett Ziegler. So this is all coming to a head. And then one of our channel stalkers, who is actually working with MG, if you all remember Reset, Flat Earth Reset, I was planning, and this is, don't you hate it when you plan an elaborate revenge and before you get there they die? Because we were planning an entire episode, an IPR deep dive into identifying and doxing this pernicious troll. And we had this big plan. I was going to wear these. This was a plan. It was going to basically be like kicking his door at 3 a.m. Here's Johnny, like The Shining. I even found these. I saw these shoes that had the floor from the Overlook Hotel as a design on the shoes. Like right out of The Shining. I was like, I'm going to get these boots. I'm going to wear these when I kick his door. Anyway, we had this big plan. It was going to be an expose. It was going to be something live and entertaining, just to, make good on a promise I'd made 6 years earlier. And I got a notice because I counter stalk all of my stalkers and former stalkers. So whenever one of them moves or joins another social media, I tend to get a ping. So I get a ping a couple nights ago, and it's like, yeah, Ellen Francis Cook is dead. Now, I don't know the cause. I didn't find out the exact place. I wasn't able to get any information, but yeah, unfortunately, he's dead. Unfortunately, because we didn't get to have our fun. Ollie Goering says retrospective is out, looking forward is in. Stop looking back, no more looking back. Yep. And also, objects in the mirror are likely larger than they appear. Tricky Woo says, I lost touch with IPS when something made my Bugman phone burn up. Yeah, what does the mirror thing mean? That's what we were suggesting, and I thought, well, maybe it is leaving behind a lot of stuff. So we got, yeah, we've got the death of a channel enemy, the impending incarceration of another channel enemy as we loot their coffers. And then we have Mind Control Central, who attempted, in many ways, collaborated in the efforts to censor us. You know, they definitely were part of that. The attempted suppression of the IPS by Mind Control Central there at Google. They're in our crosshairs, but it's all happening right now. So the timing of the mirror falling off seems somewhat portentous. Cubstar says, did he get hit in the head by a rear view mirror? Well, I was driving, and I was stunned. Like I don't really get phased easily, but I was, it's heavily. The traffic was just so thick, so I'm deep in traffic. There's no way to turn left or right or get out of traffic, and the mirror just falls off, and I'm like, I hope I don't cause a wreck. And it wasn't on the freeway. We're only going 30 miles an hour, but I saw it. It was there on the line, and I just figured, this is going to be bad. I'm going to end up on Reddit, because Albuquerque has a Reddit, and they constantly showcase anyone who does something terrible, whether they're driving a cyber truck or littering. And I didn't want to be exposed as a litterer. But no, I got away with it. All right, let's move on. And I already ordered the new one, so it's going to be fixed. So if I get it in by tomorrow, then there's a strong possibility that I may go down to White Sands if I can indeed witness the return of this thing. I don't know where I would have to be. I don't know I doubt it's public, but you should be able to see it. Let me see if I can get an idea. Okay, White Sands, New Mexico from my present location. I don't think it's more than 3 or 4 hours. So I can see the plane drop it off. Now, what are they going to do? It is a Boeing event. Like, are they going to have some kind of a parachute malfunction? Again, this is the first time landing on Earth. So it's a very significant development. All right, we talked about this the other day. The Simpsons has an episode where they explain the rationale for faking Mars. So for those of you who are believers in space travel and you can't fathom, why would they fake it? Why would they fake going to the moon? Why would they fake going to Mars? Well, here's your answer. It's put here in The Simpsons, and I think it perfectly explains the reason why.
Not happening. Do you know how to run the dishwasher?
Of course not. Maybe we can use paper plates.
Where the hell did we get those? Marge, no!
3, 2.
So the story is Marge and Lisa are going to Mars, but it doesn't actually happen.
It's not a real rocket. It's the outside of a real rocket.
We did plan to build a real rocket.
And that's one thing they can never take away from us.
So they reveal it's fake. It's not a real rocket, which is the truth. But why would they fake it? Well,
That plan is our legacy.
Then why did you move up the launch if you knew it was fake?
To inspire the next generation.
And to provide a distraction.
to inspire the next generation. And that's exactly it. The space program is the heaven program. It's a religious concept. The space program is about transcendence. It's about unification, about a universal faith. And if we can all agree on this heaven, this utopia, maybe we'll stop fighting. It's this one worldism. It's based on cosmism, Russian cosmism, combined with theosophy and some New Age concepts, but it's a heaven for the New Age. Space is fake. And they fake it because it's giving us an ideal. Nick Fingar says, do people actually say GIF and Jiffy is a Mandela effect? Yes, they do claim that some people saying GIF and some saying Jiffy is evidence that reality is fractured and some of us are from another dimension. No Occam's razor. No critical thinking. No, let's reach for the most likely explanation first. No, let's reach for the most outlandish, supernatural explanation. Yeah, the reason why we misspell words is reality keeps shifting. Nobody has ever misspelled a word. Did you know that? Like, you never should have had your grades taken down if you misspelled a word. Every word that you spell is actually spelled correctly and everyone else is wrong, you see, because reality shifted. Dilemma? Yeah, it used to have two M's. You're not wrong. Reality's wrong. The dictionary's wrong. Do you see the problem with that line of thinking? Like, I'm not wrong, my memory's not wrong, reality's wrong, the world's wrong, the universe is wrong. And those of you who are similarly, I guess, confused, like me, we can all join together and form a club. And then we can just say everybody else is wrong. And that's what the Mandela effect is. It is really just a group of people who agree on certain wrong answers. It would be like if you had a bunch of students in a class who all got F or D's on their grades, and they far outnumber the A's, the A pluses, and they say, this isn't really fair. Let's just suggest here that reality shifted and that we're right. And they just kind of, by force, assert that they're right and call the other people zombies and non-Mandela affected. It's very divisive when it comes down to it. But it comes down to it is it's just the inability to admit that one is wrong, that one can be wrong. And here's one of the main tenets of Autohoaxology 101. We are all dupable. If you don't believe you can be duped, then you're a dupe. And you don't understand cognition and how we can be tricked. You go to a magic show, you sit down in your seat, you will be tricked. If you don't know how the tricks work, and these are designed from the magician's perspective, the way that he's directly in front of you, and you're in the seat, you can't see anything that would give away the trick. So you're kind of like, in a way, as a captive audience, you're incapable of seeing through the illusion. You're in a very suggestible state, but you're also incapacitated. Now you know it's fake, you know it's not magic, yet you still can't see through it. So here's the thing. You go to a magic show, you can't determine how they do these things. Does it mean it's magic? No. It means it's a trick that you haven't figured out yet. When people watch the news, when conspiracy theorists watch the news, if they can't figure out how something was faked, they assume it's real. Like, I can't understand how they could fake planes hitting the building. Therefore, it's real. You see, they fall for the magic show. Now, the only way you can deconstruct these magic shows is if you get up out of your seat so you're not where the magician needs you to be. Then you can see backstage, and then you can witness how the thing actually works. And what we at the IPS have is a backstage view to the magic show that we call the world stage. So we don't operate under the premise that if I can't reverse engineer this right now, it must be real. We don't give them the default position of real. No, we're like, you're fake until proven real, with facts, with evidence. And if you can't provide that, well, we're under no obligation to believe. So we are informed non-believers. We are not flippantly choosing to not believe. This isn't some kind of reactionary position. Okay, I got a clip here, or rather a short excerpt from the book I'm reading, A Country of the Blind, about the group, the cabal that manipulate history itself. And the protagonist at the part of the book where I'm in has been recruited. And she's giving a presentation on mass manipulation. And this book came out in '87. But you might find this interesting. She says here, "The condensation of memes is a well understood phenomenon. Surely someone of your caliber intends to rehash more than a rehash of a familiar topic." And what it goes on here is, "I intend to explore the conditions required for multiple and simultaneous centers of condensation." So they're talking about the condensation of memes. And the way they operate is this group that manipulates history, they call themselves Cleologists, Cleo being the Greek muse of history, is they insert memes in the form of headlines to bend the news, to influence the population, and they engage in perception management in a very almost passive way. And it describes this scenario where the entire world is guided by this small group. So it goes on here to say, she pointed out the population density needed to supply a sufficient number of susceptible minds, the need for high connectivity of the communication network, the cultural momentum as described by the speed and volume of the transport, the fraction of the population engaged in travel, and she cited numerous examples of simultaneous discoveries. So in this article here, and it goes on to say, you mentioned high connectivity of communications. So this book came out in 87, and it posits this history manipulation by a small group. This is pre-internet, and this came out before memes were widely discussed, but it's all about memes and the use of these insusceptible minds to steer the masses. So what I find intriguing about this book, because it's science fiction, but it's entirely plausible, is that it's presented as more or less as a hypothetical. But we know this to be not only just a hypothetical, but the reality of it is it's way more active than passive. They're not merely passively bending history through subtly influencing us by putting memes out there, but they're actually engaging in mass, I would say, I guess, yeah, I guess there'd be, you'd call them psychological operations, but the scale at which they do it, the scale of fakeability is far beyond what they're doing here. It's very active. We're talking about mass mind control through psyops that are forcefully projected onto the collective psyche. Unavoidable. It's immersive. So the fact of it is, there's that expression that truth is stranger than fiction. And the fact of it is that if this book were written today, it would, I don't know, I think it would do very well. It was like ahead of its time. I think people would find it far more plausible. Because when this book came out, they didn't really have a mechanism to explain how everything would work. Well, now we've got TikTok, we've got Twitter, we have the mass media synchronizing everybody at the drop of a dime on the latest current thing. I mean, last year, everybody was focused on Taylor Swift. You didn't want to be, but it's everywhere. Every grocery store, it's on every TV screen. And so it's far more immersive, far more controlled than it was. And so this book falls short of explaining um, how powerful this type of influence could actually be, or is. Tim Osman says, I don't see how two skyscrapers falling with the city of hundreds of thousands could be filmed from different random people and still be fake. You aren't looking for evidence on the matter. Right, well, you have to get out of your seat. You know, you're at the magic show, sitting in your seat looking at the TV, and you assume the TV is presenting to you a window to something that happened at a different time, something at a distance. You're not accounting for the fact that the TV is a filter and that they can have pre-recorded footage inserted. You're also not including the fact that on 9/11 there were at least, and this is from the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, at least 88 drills being performed that day. What were they drilling for? It wasn't for mass shooters. No, they were drilling for terror attacks, and just like what we saw. So 88 drills on 9/11, 1,000 plus plain clothes, live casualty, mass casualty role-playing actors. The controlled demolition, which is what it was taking place around a closed movie set early in the morning. They had these drills already in place, which means it was already scheduled to happen. Every camera that you saw, every person holding a camera, was not mainstream media like CNN or Fox. You had these random people, but these people were plants. They were there for a reason. There's a reason why one of the handy cams that you see has an explosion, and you're looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger's face, collateral damage, 8:46 a.m., boom. Yeah, that's planted. Collateral Damage had 9/11 predictive programming in it. They had to scrap the movie and release it a year later because it's so closely aligned with what happened that day. The significance of Arnold Schwarzenegger has to do with the Terminator, has to do with this bigger theme of the sinking of the West. As James Cameron, Terminator, sinking of the Titanic, sinking of the Twin Towers, the Terminator overlooking Ground Zero, all ties in to the destroyer in the abyss overlooking the destroyed Titanic. This is a story, and it's multifaceted. And so you can't get distracted by the special effects. There were no planes. It was a controlled demolition. There was no magic space lasers, no tactical nukes, no thermite, none of this Judy Woods crap. It was just a demo. They just pulled it. And the thing is, when you see something on TV, they can add layering. So what you saw on TV wasn't what people witnessed that day. Like you didn't see jumpers on TV that day. This stuff came out later, post-production. So yeah, it was fake top to bottom. And if you believe it, you can only believe it. You don't know it to be true. You don't know anybody that died that day. And you haven't done your due diligence if you haven't examined the body of work that contests the dominant view. If you believe the official version, then you're taking on faith that all these different news agencies are faithfully reporting facts as they happen. That's not how media works. They're not reporting stuff to inform you. They're producing stuff to conform you. And 9/11 is just one of many staged events that they use to guide our history. Just one of many. Tim says there's no evidence that it's fake. So many random people filming. Okay, you have to remember too, this thing was planned at least 33 years before it happened. Planned before the towers were built. There is predictive programming for 9/11 in Kubrick's movie Dr. Strangelove, 1963. There's predictive programming for it there's hints of it in Newsbenders, no less. So if you're writing something and you got the greatest minds on earth, think about the genius that goes into some of the great works that we see today in cinema. The attention to detail, the nuance. You know what goes into these movies. 9/11 is one of the greatest movies they were going to produce. You think that they don't think about the details? Like who's going to be there? Who's going to be filming it? Who's going to be witnessing? What are they going to say? And if you listen to any of the 9/11 witnesses that day, they're all actors reading scripts. But if you're a mainstream media believer and a media advocate, good for you. I'm not here to convert people who are believers. We are distinctly moving into this parallel media realm where we are non-believers, agnostics about bullshit. Provide us facts, but you don't have any. All you have is your faith in whatever is presented on that screen. And you are a believer, not a knower, and that's huge. And if you're not actively seeking to debunk and discredit your own theories, you're not even objective. If I was a 9/11 believer and I heard these things, I would dig into it. In fact, I would be offended. I would be so offended. I'm like, wait, Pete Davidson's dad died at 33 on 9/11. Miko Hughes, another actor, his dad died on 9/11. You have a list of people that you could directly point to, and you're gonna you pile these up, and you're like, are all these people liars? Like this should be exposed. You ever heard of the 9/11 sign? The 9/11 sign, which it was like a term they used to describe this phenomenon where many people post 9/11 were falsely claiming to know people who died on 9/11. And it was so common. In fact, we used to have it. We used to have people calling in claiming that they knew people who died there. And then I'd say, well, who? They would draw a blank. Oh, I can't tell you. Okay, well, if I had counted them up, I imagine it would probably have been about 5,000 people. I don't think 5,000 people died on 9/11. All right, let's see. Now, Tim says you aren't indifferent. You're saying it's not real. Oh, no, I'm not indifferent. I'm exposing propaganda. And no, it was real, but it was a real propaganda event. And now, let me ask you this. Let's pretend for a minute that it was real as you explain, okay? How do you have a building collapse? How do you have a mass casualty event like that occur while you have military exercises and National Reconnaissance Office drills being conducted all around? How do you have that all happen at the same time? If you look at the number of drills being performed, it's like, well, there's a lot of crisis actors that could have been hurt in that terror attack. Imagine, if it were real as you say, then it was within the realm of possibility that a bunch of literal crisis actors could have been killed in a real terror attack because they were there at the same time. Sorry, if there's one crisis actor at an event, the whole thing is fake. They don't mix it. Case is closed. Jake M says, "How about the Boston Marathon? LOL. The guy whose legs were supposedly blown off was an actor who already had no legs. Footage of paramedics throwing blood around." Oh, I love the Boston Marathon. You have was it Carlos Rendondo with the cowboy hat racing the guy in the wheelchair to the finish line, and he's like got his fingers pinching his femoral artery so the blood doesn't squirt out, and he's sitting upright. It's like that would have drained him in a few seconds. Yeah, that was a hilarious event. I mean, it was hilarious because it was so poorly done. But you'll notice they used that military smog generator. They create this, it's not even smoke. They use concealment fog to do the special effects. And you can deconstruct that one quite easily. In fact, you have many examples of, chairs being tossed over, debris being thrown way after the fact. But that was totally fake. You had the special effects department with hoodies rushing in and applying the special effects, adding the prosthetic parts or taking out. It was a joke. It was so poorly executed. It gave a lot of us a lot of insight into how this thing works. Tim Osman says Dearth was one that said he knew people, and he said he saw the towers jail be exposed to him just before the Flat Earth psyop. Yeah, deep inside the rabbit hole, Dearth fed Flat Earth Dave, Dearthy Dave. He called me on Skype, and he told me, "Don't say nobody died on 9/11." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "I was a witness." He said he saw the planes. And I believe even Dave Murphy, sorry, Dave Murphy. It's just that he advocates drinking one's own urine for health reasons. And he doesn't look all that healthy to me, but Dave Murphy was also a volunteer fireman on 9/11. So you got all these people that we know today who are similarly connected to PSYOPs then. And yeah, he's a false witness. He no longer claims that. Tricky Woo says they always do drills when committing false flags, plausible deniability, in case any of the actors are caught by agents or police not in the operation. Yeah, that's definitely the case. You do find a concurrence with drills and these events all the time. Why is that? Let me give you an example. For those of you believers in media advocates, propaganda advocates, mind control advocates, since you're complicit in this and you go along with it, cool. You believe in Vegas, right? You believe that a bunch of people got shot in Vegas? Explain this to me then. 13 months later, 50 of the same victims are in a different bar in California, dancing to country music, and they get shot at again. Coincidence? If you're a media advocate, true believer in the MSM, then you have to believe that. You must accept as a fact that 50 people shot at in Vegas on 10/1/2017 were shot at again 13 months later. Now, you've accepted that fact. You also have to accept the fact that down the street from the second shooting, there was a drill being conducted, a mass casualty exercise based on Vegas, involving 50 crisis actors. 50 crisis actors, 50 victims. Interesting. Same time, based on this shooting. So imagine this. You're a victim at Vegas, and then you go to Thousand Oaks. You're a victim again. And as you're being victimized, down the street, there's 50 people reenacting your previous victimization from 13 months ago. I find it to be hard to believe. But, you can walk around with a TV set for a head, and just, your head's in the box. Everything is filtered by the screen. Tim Osman says, "Vomit Comet lasts for a few seconds. It's not perfect." Yeah, Vomit Comet is a straw man argument. Nobody, literally nobody on Flat Earth says NASA's faking space on parabolic flights. Nobody says that. It's not even plausible. They train in that sense. They train on parabolic flights a little bit. However, since you brought it up, if you look at the way hair moves on parabolic flights when they're simulating zero-G, it moves around naturally, as you would expect it to, flowingly. But if you look at hair on the ISS, it's hairsprayed. It's standing straight up. Although, if you're a media advocate, true believer, your cognitive dissonance won't allow you to see the difference between hair on a parabolic flight and hair on the ISS. Like, you won't be able to process that, which just shows how damaged you are. Okay, Jake M says, "We couldn't film them landing from the Earth if we had access to a P900 today or something that was..." What are we talking about? All right, let's see here. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground. I wanted to get back. Stranger Day says when vomit gets in the hair, it might stand straight up. Okay, now that's something I want to bring up because supposedly there's some kind of space bug going around the space station, a virus that's mutating. So if that's true, somebody needs to shoot that thing down, kill it with fire. Don't let them bring down some mutated space virus down to the Earth. But that's likely going to happen. So just heads up. And they're landing in, I think it said White Sands. They should land in Roswell. Land in Corona Field, where the UFO landed in 1947. That's what I would do if I was directing this. But yes, they're going to be landing on the 24th from space. But about the vomit, I would believe space was real if you could show me an astronaut vomiting in space. That would convince me. I'm not convinced by soccer balls or stupid little flips where you can see the cords and they're wearing these super tight pants. Their legs look like stuffed sausages and their belts are super tight. It's because they're wearing harnesses and they're hanging upside down. Why do you need to wear a belt in space? Your pants gonna fall? There's no gravity. Yet they're all bundled up. But yeah, I would like to see an astronaut vomit in space because you couldn't fake that. But you can fake all this other stuff. Look, I'm a informed non-believer. I know why I don't believe in this crap. If you believe in it, you're a low information believer. You don't require very fancy special effects. If you're convinced by the vertical hairsprayed hair on the space station, you have a childish epistemology. I mean, you just believe anything. It's kind of sad. Stranger Day says, I want to see a spaceman sneeze in zero gravity. Well, we have a number of bloopers. I haven't seen a sneeze. We've seen astronauts drop stuff. Like on Earth Day, ironically, they had this globe that they were handing around. One of them dropped it and it fell. Why did the globe fall on the space station on Earth Day? And yet our globe just floats in space? Like what makes it fall is what I'm saying. Did the gravity from the Earth pull the globe in the space station to the floor on Earth Day? And when it happened, one of the astronauts dived for it and he stopped. You know how like a dog on a leash just stops abruptly? All these astronauts are watching the globe fall to the ground. And I think they all realize, oh crap, we dropped something. We're not supposed to do this because we're not in space, obviously. And they all dive for it, but they can only go a few inches and they stop because they got bungee cords. So none of them can reach it. And then one of the astronauts in the middle waves the other one's like, no, stay back, it's cool. They just kind of like pretend like nothing happened. And then the glurfs will say, oh, that was microgravity. There was a little bit of gravity inside of the globe that they brought with them. Just a micro pocket. They'll make something up. But no, they haven't done anything to convince us they're in space. You know what would convince me? Take an iPhone in the space station, turn it on, and just throw it around, and then give us the footage. They can't do that. They can't show us iPhone footage from the space station of the Earth through the window directly, because you would see backstage. Something you can't do if you believe in space stations. You can't do this. And look, if you can do this, I would actually put up some kind of an award for somebody. But you can't do this. Just letting you know, you can't. You cannot go outside with your space station tracking app and record the space station flying over your head. As in, you know a light's going to come in the sky. You can track it on your app, and everybody can see it. Everybody knows, right? That's what you say. But you can't go out there and say, the space station's going to be here in 2 minutes here, so I'm going to sit here. I'm going to do a selfie, and we're going to record a video of the space station passing over my head on time. You can't do that. Now, you'll see ISS transits, but it's always some $20,000 telescope, and it's only done in front of the moon, or it's only done in front of the sun. Why does that matter? No eyewitnesses. You can't see it if it's in front of the sun with your eyes. You can't see it at night. So if it's in front of the moon, it's only the silhouette. So the only witness is your telescope and the footage processed through your editor. I don't trust you. I want to see eyeball contact with the ISS. If you can't do that, you're lying. So we're raising the bar. We're raising the standard of evidence. Not even Jaron can do this. Jaron provided multiple ISS transits from daytime and nighttime through these filters, which makes me believe he works for NASA, unless anybody has a better explanation. But what Jaron can't do is he can't record the ISS showing up on time with a selfie video. And none of you believers can do it either. Just saying. And I'm going to continue to maintain this point because this has been going on for years. I mean, forget about the shape of the Earth. For years and years, 10 years now, people have been talking about the fake space station. Not one space station believer has had the time to walk outside and take a selfie with it. How hard can it be? I mean, if it's as easy as they say. I've had expert glurfs, high-ranking glurfs, like McToon. He's like, yeah, just get the app and go outside and look at it. I'm like, well, have you seen it? And he's like, no. I think he paused and he said, because he was wondering if he should lie. Because, a lot of these glurfs lie reflexively. If you've seen the ISS, you're a liar. Bottom line. And so he was about to lie and he decided not to lie. And I'm like, oh, you haven't seen it and you're telling me to go see it. Stranger Day says, I'm still waiting to see the ISS construction pics vids. Yeah, you know what it makes me think of? That meme with the skeleton. It's like still waiting. And this is me. This is me waiting for somebody to show me selfie footage of them with the ISS. This is Stranger Days waiting for footage of the ISS being constructed. And we're still waiting. Anyway, we'll be live tonight. Open phones. We're going to talk about Robert De Niro, Joker, and the developing meta script regarding Trump. The debate is next week. The Boeing Starliner disaster is going to happen in a couple of days. Hunter Biden's lawsuit versus Garrett Ziegler is intensifying. Ziegler is going to be charged with hacking, I think, which has significant ramifications for us because of our shared common defendant in this thing. So we'll follow that as well, but we'll do open phones later. I know there's quite a lot more to talk about, but I want to say thanks for joining. June 22nd, Infinite Plane Radio Morning Deprogram. This is Space is Fake AF Chief Crow and open phones tonight, so subscribe for the notifications.
Have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Because you can see the stars.
Oh, yeah.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas.
Big time lady, say the sky was not the limit. He fly to the